Calm down! You fucking calm down!
Hey there, cats and kittens. Marlboro Man from Wham Radio and New Wham TV, because we have mutiny people coming right at you from beautiful downtown Berwyn, Illinois, with America's beautiful co-host, Miss Anarchist.
Hey guys, this is Anarchist coming to you from the dark side of the moon here on the Wham Radio Network. Just to start off today's show, we want to thank our sponsors, JC's Resale Shop. If you can't find it anywhere else, you can always find it at JC's. And our other sponsor, Berwyn Tobacco and Vapes. If you need a smoke or need a toke, you can find the best deal in town at Berwyn Tobacco and Vapes. I just want to open up today's show topic. We're going to talk about government overreach in small businesses and why this is the reason we can't have nice stuff.
That's right, and government overreach is the reason that we can't have nice stuff, because we can't have nice small businesses that way, basically. They put up obstacles, there's all kinds of mazes to navigate through, I guess is the word for it. Whatever you want to say, all kinds of ways to scare people and make them afraid to even want to go into business for themselves in the first place. So they set this up on purpose. And the people that are in business, they do everything they possibly can to keep them down and knock them down and try to try to beat them into submission. And not to mention the monopolies that put all of them out of business as well. What we really need is a nice, robust, real true free market economy without all of these obstacles. A society where everybody wants to go into business for themselves. They're incentivized and motivated to actually do these things on their own, and they don't have to go through any regulation or anything like that. Your regulation is your customer, basically, and you don't need any other regulation actually. You don't even need a consumer watchdog group. If you're killing people, obviously no one's going to come to your business if you're poisoning the public.
That's true. So just to reiterate on what Marlboro Man was saying, speaking of jumping through hoops and all these regulations and stuff, basically what he's saying is that government overreach actually hurts entrepreneurial enterprise by restricting interactions and transactions, which are all voluntary. They're all voluntary interactions, transactions. They're all voluntarily done amongst the people, usually with customers, and they restrict interactions between the seller and the buyer, transactions between contractors and contractees. It restricts relationships between employers and employees. There's all types of levels of relationships that people interact and transact amongst each other. Just listing a few that most people are come in contact with on a day-to-day basis. When you go to the store and buy something, it should be negotiated amongst the store owner and the customer of how much they're willing to sell something for. So one of the very first limitations and restrictions that governments have a tendency to overreach on is permits and licenses. They're actually a violation on the First Amendment. The freedom to associate, the freedom to assemble. When you're creating a business and you're providing a good or a service or some type of product, you should be free to associate and to assemble with other people in your community to create these products or services or goods. This should all be done freely amongst the people, but what happens is with government overreach, they create licenses, certifications, permits, which all could be obtained through oneself by completing such tasks and having other people witness them complete the task and say, yeah, they've mastered the skill of food handling, or yes, they've mastered the skill of serving alcohol. You know, you don't need to take a state-sponsored class to prove that you know how to handle food or to serve alcohol or a very basic skill. And it puts restrictions on employers because they can only hire people with these certifications when the majority of the public don't have these certain certifications. It really restricts their ability to give other people jobs.
In other words, there might be a whole bunch of people that are willing to work, but they can't be hired by the person who's struggling to try to hire somebody.
Right. It creates big job holes, like a big gap in the work market, because now it's going to be the skilled versus the unskilled.
Right, and of course, all these reasons that people can't get into things in America, those become excuses very easily as to why you can't do something.
Exactly. Which is the government's favorite way of creating its own income. They call it the Hegelian dialectic, which is problem, reaction, solution. They create the problem, they wait for a reaction, and then propose their own prepackaged solution to fix the problem that they created in the first place. For example, work shortages.
Right. The ready-made excuses like the economy.
Right.
Work, like you mentioned, work shortages, supply shortage is another good excuse.
And this is all stuff that's manufactured and created by governments so that the people would have no other choice but to turn to the government for their prepackaged solution, ready-made for them to buy, you know, especially when they prepackage your natural rights and they sell it back to you. You know, here's the solution. Let me sell you back your rights so that way you can fix your own problem.
And if you could have all that, why would you want to go into business for yourself and be independent of everything? Why on earth when you could have everything that the government has to offer?
That's right.
Why would you want to be free if you could have what the government is offering you?
We have a basic universal income. Why would you need a job?
That barely covers anything and makes you really wish that you were probably dead enough to do something that you could make a little extra money doing.
Or actually decide to go into business for yourself.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you're back to square one again, aren't you?
Right. Well, at the end of the
yeah.
day, you know, we
Right.
want people to go into business for themselves. That's what being in the free market and competing and making your own money is all about.
Yes, never work for someone else again. Always just work for yourself. You're going to work with other people. You're going to negotiate with clients and customers. You shouldn't have a boss. You should have a customer or a client. That's the way it should be. You know, honestly, everyone should be their own, like just independent contractor style. Negotiate your own contracts with whatever job it is that you're doing. You know, cash at the end of the day, whatever the economy demands. You know, if we're in a situation in a poor economy that dictates you need to have cash at the end of the day's job when your services are rendered, then you got to negotiate for that. You know, and people will do that. That's how the market ebbs and flows and bends and bows and corrects itself. You know, and it also corrects a lot of other things in the process, like community, you know, because when you do business that way, suddenly you have to depend on this thing called community, because that's, you know, where you trust people in a community. There has to be some level of trust, you know, like everyone gets together and agrees on certain stuff, like, okay, like who might be the sheriff if we need a sheriff, you know, if that's, usually crime wouldn't be an issue though, because you're all just trying to survive anyway.
Right.
You know, if you've already decided that you're just going to, you know, come together and do that, then, you know, no one's going to be trying to steal anything at that point. You've already thrown that out the window. Like, we're not going to do that, you know.
That's true. That's true.
Most civilized people would come to that conclusion.
You would think.
Right.
All right.
So do we really need to be afraid?
Right. So when the government decides to use a Hegelian dialectic to control both sides of the populations, the have-nots, the white supremacists, the black supremacists, all the elites versus the non-elites,
And the other supremacists.
right, the other supremacists too. When they're trying to use a Hegelian dialectic to control the narrative that's going on in most people's lives, that's their own way of making money. They use problems So like a good government slogan would be, your problem is our solution, because they want you to make these mistakes and not be able to figure out how to correct your own mistakes, because they monopolize on your losses and use those as stepping stones into creating legislation that actually works against you. For example, the government, of course, can't make its own money, so it's got to resort to extortion via taxation. The government is so big that it is unsustainable in itself, and it's got to raise taxes. It's got to, pay for campaigns to keep itself in power. It's got to do all these things to stay afloat, to cover the costs that it's incurring, because it's operating every day, according, of course, to its own rules. Never the rules of the people, never to what we agreed on, never to what the Constitution says. The government creates its own laws and its own rules because it's a corporation. It operates as a business and not as an organization, like a non-profit organization would operate. Okay, so it has to resort to creating these problems, so that way when it sells you the solution, it's making money off these solutions via taxation, via selling you guys licenses and business licenses and fishing licenses and certifications that you know how to work on a car or serve alcohol or something. It creates these it monopolizes on these problems, these worries that people have with the free market, when the free market should be able to correct itself on its own with the customers that come in to do business with these business owners. It should correct itself. And initially, when our founding fathers created this country, they didn't say that the three branches of government was going to be in charge of the market that would become the United States. It was just checks and balances for the government itself to not become too big and to be corrupt. That our founding fathers initially wanted the free market to govern the United States. And actually, we would be a more moral society if the free market governed us rather than an actual government itself.
Yes, the government doesn't want you to be they don't want you to succeed, and they don't want you to be a big family living in your own house. The government is way more comfortable with you just being a single person living in a rented apartment space and going to your, job every day that just it perfectly sustains your existence, and you don't desire anything else. You just live that way, and you're just happy like that forever.
Like somehow. In a bubble.
Yeah, I like that. In a bubble, yeah.
A little bubble that the government can pop anytime it wants.
The gov bub. It's the gov bub.
Government, what is it? Government.bub.
Yeah, government.bub. That's great.
So, when it comes to government overreach and small businesses, we really don't want this. We want people to go into business for themselves and be motivated and have an incentive to open up a business and to do interactions and transactions. And if it was all based, on hearsay and on the free market, the people are the ones who are really interacting with the free market and not the government. The government actually tries to become the gatekeepers to the free market, to you being able to go make that money, for you to be able to wager your labor like a free man or free woman or they, them, whatever you want to be. You have the right as a free person to go negotiate your wages.
And just to put into perspective, they're so extreme. They're so incredibly extreme that they really that they want to create a problem where we have hardly any population, and we need people all of a sudden, and they can just make the people in a test tube, and that's the way that they'll solve the problem. And we'll be okay with that because, hey, we need more people, right? And they come to solve the problem. So that's how extreme they are. They want that to be the problem. that they need to grow people in a test tube all of a sudden.
Right. No, well, they want that to be the solution to the problem.
Exactly. Right. Yes.
Right. They want that to be they want to be able to grow people and type in a computer what skills they want them to have, so they can pop them out of the tube and put them in the position that they want.
We'll just phase out the normal people, and you'll just have government people.
You'll just have government,
Maybe.
government-sponsored humans.
Yeah. Yuck.
And who wants those? Eventually, you'll just create another form of class warfare where it'll be like the the neo-humans versus
the mutated,
the old humans
Yeah.
and the mutated ones.
Right, yeah.
And then the elite on top of that,
Of course, yeah.
the elite, the 1% on top of that too.
They'll still be there, behind the curtain.
Behind the curtains,
Right.
just like in
Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain.
That's right.
And it was just a little guy, and that's the government. They're just a little man behind the curtain because they were not strong enough in life to obtain these things on their own, so they had to resort to lies and deception and manipulation to acquire the things that people on an everyday basis work very hard to obtain for themselves.
Exactly.
Food, water, shelter,
Yeah.
raising a family, teaching your kids morals, and raising them to be, part of society and have the skills necessary to continue on.
That should be what we're promoting. That's supposed to be what we all want. That's the big goal that we're supposed to really be going for here. But unfortunately, I think, well, there's definitely a lot of good people out there.
There is.
We're really winning.
There are more good
seems
people.
to always outweigh evil somehow.
Right.
That is one thing that we have on our side.
And especially when we see this stuff with the whole Russian-Ukraine issue. I know it's totally off topic, but you'll always hear how the Russians don't agree with Putin doing what he's doing. Just like over here in America, when we went to Afghanistan and Iraq and all that, the American people didn't want the American government over there. So we all know to a certain extent that none of our governments truly represent the will of the people.
No. And the crazy thing about Putin is that he's the man behind the curtain, but he's honest about it. It's hard to kind of you almost want to be on the guy's side. He's really good at what he does.
I am the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, exactly.
Root for me.
Right, root for me then. Yeah, I'm the underdog behind the curtain somehow.
He's like, you see those other little men behind those curtains over there? I'm gonna defeat them too. And then you got the Rothschilds in one curtain.
Yeah.
And then you got the Queen of England in another curtain.
Right.
And then you got Justin Trudeau in this curtain over here.
Yep. And Putin definitely is no underdog. He was in the KGB at 15 years old.
Right.
So he's an elitist. He's still an elitist.
He's still an elitist. I mean, he was voted out of
Just
government.
like Queen Elizabeth.
He was voted out of government back in 2010, 2012.
Right.
He was defeated, They voted a new guy, and Putin, with his own private army,
Just killed the
guy and just
took
sat
it
right back in the
over.
seat, and he's been there ever since. And nobody says anything
We
about
must
that.
have emergency election now because the guy is dead.
The guy is dead.
Oh, I'm running unopposed all of a sudden.
I win.
I win.
I win.
Well, you heard it, people. It was fair and square. I win.
So just to reiterate the different things we talked about on today's show.
Yes.
So, of course, the government can't make its own money. It has to resort to extortion and taxation. In order for it to make this money, it's got to create the problems and offer solutions. Problem, reaction, solution, or what we say in the marketing world, create, wait, and offer. They use these problems to create fictional things that you need to obtain, like permits and licenses, violating the First Amendment with your freedom to associate, freedom to assemble. And then by creating these licenses and permits, it hurts entrepreneurial enterprise by restricting them. Now employers can't hire certain employees because they don't have certain pieces of paper. And sellers and buyers can't negotiate prices because the government is regulating the prices and setting the prices when that should be done between the seller and the buyer. It's hurting employees and employers, like I've touched on, and it's hurting contractors and contractees. As you know, contractors, these are the people who build your roads, who make the buildings you live in, your houses, your apartments. These are the people with the skills to actually create the very foundations that we need to live in society in itself. The very foundation of a town or a city.
That's why we always recommend being independent contractors yourself in whatever area you want to go into. Just be an independent contractor in that field.
Independent contractor teaching.
And nonprofit,
And nonprofit
that's
work.
That's the way to go, right?
Yeah.
Because
Charities.
You can make your own money in nonprofit, but you're just basically saying, I care more about something else. I care about the bigger picture. That's really what being a nonprofit is.
And it would totally...
And our government allows you to do that and won't argue with you.
That's right.
Currently.
That's right. I
say
mean,
currently.
remember, I think we've talked about this before, where the government is so overbearing on the people that even like in which government was it that they banned doctors?
Oh, that was the Russians. Yeah, that's
right.
That
So
was Stalin.
Stalin banned doctors from practicing. So, that's government overreach.
It was so bad that when he had like a stroke or an aneurysm or something, and the doctors were afraid to operate on him. They were afraid to do anything at all.
Right.
They didn't touch him. They just left him like that.
You had to leave him.
They were afraid if they treated him, they'd get arrested for being a doctor. Treating him.
And most people's mindset always goes to, well, that was the Russian government or that was the Canadian government.
Yeah.
But it's just
Not
government.
In my house.
Yeah, but it is government in general. This is what governments were created to do. They weren't there to represent the will of the people. They're there to take advantage of the downfalls of the people and to monopolize on those very downfall things that happen. They monopolize on accidents. They monopolize on people making mistakes.
Right.
Creating the biggest prison system this world has ever seen. Our American government, took advantage of victimless crimes.
It's too easy to take an "it can never happen to me" stance or attitude.
Right.
And it's a mistake. It's easy and it's a mistake. It
Yep.
can happen to you. It will happen to you.
And it can happen to you or someone you know.
It's happened in every country throughout the history. And it's
And
happened to every country throughout history.
And the history of history says
That's right.
it's gonna happen to you. Okay,
And remember,
Marlboro.
the U.S. is how young the U.S. is. We haven't been around that
No,
long.
yeah, next to China that's been around for 6,000 years
we
in their
make this
government.
mistake, we really need I wouldn't say an uprising, just be controlled again by the people.
Well, what we just talked about earlier, when your government is failing, the defaults should always be the
right,
people.
Exactly. We are the default.
We are the default. When our governments are failing us, we are the de facto government in its place. We are the ones who uphold the economy, who uphold morality,
That's right.
who uphold
values,
right? Interactions and transactions as well. We're the ones who do it, not
And
the government.
The quick and easy way to accomplish all that is just quit all your jobs tomorrow and become an independent contractor for yourself.
In the same position.
In the same position, do the same thing automatically. And then all of a sudden, like magic, our problems in this country will start to float away.
Like the government should.
That's right. And we'll be too happy to notice. That's the best part.
Well, Marlboro
Yes.
Man,
Well,
we're going
man.
to close out the
That's
show.
right. We shall. This has been Marlboro Man and
Anarchist coming to you from the dark side of the moon on the Wham Radio Network.
And this has been Marlboro from Wham Radio as well, signing out, folks.
We'll see you all on the next show.